we were trying to hole out in a hurry, and you know what happened.
The rains came.
There you are, Ed.
Thank you.
Well, I think we should do this more often.
Right, it's been much too long since we've gotten together like this.
I agree. Soda, Frank?
I'll do it, thank you.
I'll have mine on the rock stand, if you don't mind.
Hey, Dan, what's this? I mean this newspaper over here. Rascality exposed. Dealers named with selling goods under false pretenses. Is this ad a gag?
Oh, no. That's a genuine ad published by the Distillers of Canadian Club back in 1901.
Well, I'll be.
I suppose the other fellas figured if they couldn't copy the taste, at least they could copy the label, eh? Very interesting. What's your connection here, Dan? Just the fact that you serve Canadian Club to your friends?
No, Glenn. The ad is just a coincidence. My connection is with the story of the old schooner Martha Town. She was a blockade runner for the South during the war between the states. As you can see here, an unsuccessful attempt was made to salvage her secret cargo in 1901.
But I still say, how do you fit in?
Well, my great-grandfather was both the captain and the owner of the Martha Town. And he was aboard when she was sunk in 1864 by a federal gunboat. One of the few things that was saved was this, the ship's log.
Doesn't the log describe the secret cargo?
Well, not specifically. According to this, the old boy started out as a blockade runner in the year 62. Now, he'd pick up cargoes of cotton and tobacco, and then he'd slip through the blockade of the Union ships. And then he'd reload with goods that were badly needed by the South, and back he'd come. But the log never describes the exact cargo on the return trips.
Well, in those days, the South needed plenty of things. Salt, for instance, was worth more than its weight in gold. So were coffee and tea and medical supplies. Pins and needles were priceless.
So was practically anything made of metal.
Say, no wonder blockade running paid off so well. I just noticed in here the old boy mentioned selling cargoes to the southern auction houses for as much as $500,000.
You mean per trip?
Right?
He must have done all right for himself.
Evidently, because he mentions having to buy an extra large strongbox to, quote, to hold my mounting supply of gold, unquote. And he apparently always carried it with him.
And at $500,000 per, that must be some supply of gold.
Yes, but the thing that always intrigued me was the mystery of his final cargo. Now, he refers to it as being stowed away in heavy chests and of its tremendous value, plus its vital need to the South in 1864.
Well, maybe it was gold to pay for supplies like guns and ammunition, because some gold was brought in from Europe, I know.
Well, that's what I always thought, or hoped, was the secret cargo.
You know, I think everyone has dreamed of finding lost treasure. You know, from some pirate ship or a Spanish galleon loaded with silver, gold doubloons, precious jewels.
That's not such a wild dream. I read an article recently that said that according to official records, 1/8 of all of the gold and silver mined since the year 1500, or over $300 billion, has been lost at sea.
$300 billion, wow.
And more than that, professional treasure hunters know the approximate underwater location of more than 1,000 of these old treasure ships.
I think that's exciting.
So do I. And that's why, just 1 month ago, I went after the wreck of the Martha Town and found her. Right here.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, what did you find?
Well, the story actually begins some time ago, shortly after Doris and I were married. Doris had always been an avid skin diver. She was good at it, and it wasn't long before I, too, was just as enthusiastic about the sport. In fact, as time went on, Doris and I found ourselves investing every spare nickel in special equipment so we could dive deeper and stay down longer in our explorations of marine life. Later on, we bought a small boat to take us to water that was still deeper. good teacher and I was a willing student. Now, being an experienced underwater swimmer, Doris was always fully aware of the dangerous physical reactions that can occur when swimming in deep water. One of these dangers is that sometimes you're so fascinated by the underwater life that you abandon all sense of time, safety, and judgment. The result, of course, can be death. And then, too, there's always the old danger of the bends. Now, this happens when you come up too fast from deep water and the pressure is changed too rapidly. Soon I was trying my hand at spearfishing. Boy, I'll never forget the thrill of stalking and spearing my first barracuda. And don't think I wasn't excited the day I suddenly found myself looking straight into the eyes of a vicious moray eel. Of course, to Doris, underwater swimming was just a sport. But since I'd never completely lost my hope of someday finding a lost treasure, to me it was a definite means to an end. Then one day, we accidentally found and explored the remains of an old ship. We didn't discover any lost treasure. But after finding this wreck, even Doris had caught the excitement of treasure hunting. So, armed with the log of the Martha Town, just a little over a month ago, Doris and I drove down to the Florida Keys, where the sunken treasure fortress is located on Plantation Key. There we called on Mr. Arthur McKee Jr., who is one of the world's few professional and successful treasure hunters. We decided he was just about the best man in the country to advise and help us. Right off the bat, we were encouraged by his genuine interest in the old log of great-grandfather's ship, the Martha Town. And what's more, he agreed with us that the secret cargo, if it could be found, might be of tremendous value. Then he took us into the museum and showed us some of his collection of salvaged souvenirs that were part of the lost treasures he had personally recovered from under the seas. Spanish gold doubloons, silver pieces of 8, and many other relics. In addition to the collection of relics in the museum, Mr. McKee had built up several complete files of facts describing the location of old ships that had gone down to the bottom with cargoes of gold and silver valued in the millions of dollars. Now, these files were the result of years of research and careful study of official government records, insurance claims, old charts, manuscripts, ship's logs, and even legends. So you can imagine how we felt when on one of his charts we found the name and location of the Martha Town. Then we found the record in one of the files. It said, American schooner, English registry, blockade runner, sunk off Florida coast 1864. Cargo unknown but believed highly valuable. Salvage attempt failed 1901 due to storms, bad operating conditions, currents, and so forth. Well, to make a long story short, McKee said that in his opinion, maybe a salvage attempt was worth a try. Although he pointed out that as a salvage crew discovered in 1901, you just don't dive down and grab off a fortune and loot without effort. Treasure hunting is hard, treacherous, dirty work. And more often than not, very disappointing. But by now, we were as determined as we were excited. And before we left his office, Doris, Mr. McKee, and I made a deal. And within a week, Even though it was late in the season, with danger of running into hurricane weather, we chartered a boat and crew, and our little expedition labeled Operation Secret Cargo was on its way. While we were at sea, Doris and I spent most of our time listening to Mr. McKee's stories of his adventures on other treasure hunting trips. His stories were filled with episodes involving encounters with not only the legendary man-killing denizens of the deep like man-eating sharks, ill-tempered barracudas, and the traditional and equally legendary guardians of sunken treasure, the giant octopus, but also the dangers of strange and turbulent underwater currents, and encounters with modern sea bandits who always seem to come from nowhere to pounce on successful salvagers and relieve them of any treasure they may have taken from the sea. Stories like these seem to make an already exciting venture even more so. Then finally came the news we've been waiting to hear.
Well, folks, according to the chart here, we've arrived. If the chart is right and we're lucky, the remains of the Martha town should be under the surface somewhere near here.
After this news, naturally we lost no time starting our preliminary search for the wreck by snorkeling just under the surface of the water. The underwater scenery was beautiful, fascinating as only marine life can be. Even though we were directly over the reef where the ship was supposed to have gone down, hours of patient searching revealed no trace of her. Of course, underwater currents, constantly shifting sands, corrosion, and the wood-eating terrator worms can wipe out almost every trace of a wreck in a few short years, and the Martha town had been on the bottom since 1864. And just as we were about to quit for the day, suddenly Doris saw something.
Dan, look! Look, I think I found her.
Down in the blue-green depths was a vague ship's outline formed by tons of ballast stones. The wooden superstructure was entirely gone, but the outline of what once was a proud ship was definitely there. Was this it? Was this the remains of the Martha town and her tremendously valued secret cargo? Well, we soon found out. Since Mr. McKee, our expert, was the only one who could positively identify the wreck, he and I made the first survey of the find. I had a strange, almost eerie feeling as we swam around the ribs of what we hope was my great-grandfather's old blockade runner. One of her cannons was half buried by the ballast rocks. The old anchor was encrusted with coral, but to me the sight was completely thrilling. Well, our preliminary survey showed we were in luck. According to McKee's findings, the remains were definitely those of the Martha Town, so we marked the spot with a buoy. That evening, filled with excitement and anticipation, we drank a toast to our luck and to the secret cargo we hoped to uncover in the next few days. The following morning, we moved the ship to the spot marked by the buoy and hoisted the diver down safety signal. Now we were ready to make our first working dive to the wreck of the Martha Town. Part of our equipment included a special device for detecting metals. It worked on the same principle as the mine detectors we used in the Army. Our first trip down was exciting, if nothing else. Of course, we'd been warned that anything of value we might find wouldn't be just sitting there on a silver platter. It'd be pretty well buried in the shifting sands, and we'd have to work for it. We went down several times that first day, and even though we didn't find anything of value, we weren't discouraged. I at least had a definite hunch that any second, the metal detector or our crowbar would locate something. As a result, I was working faster and harder. At this depth, this was dangerous because not only was I using up my air supply too rapidly, but there was a definite possibility of stomach seizure. That night, we drew a sketch of the wreck to use as a guide in our search for the cargo.
This will give us a better idea of the parts of the old ship where it would be best to concentrate our searching efforts.
This sketch turned out to be a big help because 2 days later, we found what we'd been looking for. We found the first of what the ship's log had referred to as the many chests of the kind of metal that might save the South and also mean tremendous wealth to the owners. In our excitement over the find, plus the added exertion of our working, we had more than overstayed our limit, and our air supply was almost gone. For safety's sake, it was time to surface. But just then, we had a visitor, and a mean-looking one, too. As every diver knows, the most dangerous moment in shark and barracuda waters is when the swimmer is leaving the water, and only his feet remain below the surface. That's when attack is most likely. So when I saw the shark head toward Doris, I had to go after him with my spear gun. When the shark headed back for me, I fired, but my spear only wounded him, but it meant that blood had been spilled, attracting even more sharks and making the water even more dangerous. But thanks to McKee and the action of his high-powered rifle topside, we all came through that little episode unharmed. However, it would be hours before we dared go down again. And they were long hours, too, because we were anxious and impatient to open the chest we'd found in the old hull. And just as we were ready to try it again, one of the crew reported that a small craft had been circling in the distance for quite some time.
Here, take a look at them. Might be just a fishing party.
On the other hand, it might be poachers ready to move in on us if they suspected we found a treasure. Better lower that diver down flag. Keep an eye on it.
Well, poachers or not, nothing's going to stop us now.
Right, Dan. Come on, let's go.
Finally, we managed to open the lid, and there was our precious secret cargo.
Well, what was it?
Well, it wasn't a shipment of gold from Europe. But if that cargo had been delivered when it was so desperately needed, it may have been worth more than its weight in gold, because this is what we found. Iron horseshoes, tons of them. A commodity vital to the Confederate cavalry in 1864.
That's right. I remember learning about that in history class.
Iron horseshoes. Well, I am surprised.
What an ending to the story.
Oh, but that wasn't the end. Oh, we were all plenty disappointed, all right. But, as Mr. McKee said...
Well, that's all part of the game of treasure hunting. I guess we'll just have to write this trip off to fun and experience.
Just about then, the captain sent word that we'd better get underway as soon as possible. That reminded us that we were in the hurricane season, and right now the ship's barometer was still falling. But I wasn't quite ready to leave. I wanted to make just one more dive, and I finally persuaded everybody to wait at least that long. This time, I didn't go near the cargo space, but remembering the sketch that we'd drawn, I decided to explore the area where the captain's quarters were originally located. I had an idea that maybe just by luck, I might be able to find great-grandfather's extra-large strongbox he referred to in the ship's log. I searched and searched until, as usual, it was just about time for me to come up. Then, I found something. Remains of the ship's sextant. To me, this meant I was in the area of the captain's quarters for sure. So then I really went to work. What we'd been looking for. The captain's personal strongbox. On deck, they were concerned about the menacing weather, and also with the fact that I'd been in deep water well past the period of safety. But my only thought was, at last, my boyhood dream was coming true.
thrill and excitement of my discovery. I didn't think or even care about time, safety, or even if I was breathing properly. Of course, I didn't realize what might happen until suddenly it did. A severe and horrible stomach cramp. The pain of the seizure was so excruciating that I actually lost consciousness. So here's one of the coins from great-grandfather Strongbox.
What about the rest?
You said there were bags of gold, lots of them.
There are, and they're still there, I hope.
You mean you didn't go back after the rest?
Well, beginning then and ending just about now, the hurricane season has still been on. And on top of that, nobody, even Doris, was absolutely sure I hadn't just dreamed up the treasure chest during my little bout with the bends.
But what about this coin? What more proof do they need than that?
Well, when it dropped on deck, evidently it had fallen into the toe of one of my flippers. And it wasn't found again until after we were home, and Doris and I were checking over our equipment.
Well, imagine that. So now she believes you, eh?
Yes. And so, gentlemen, now that the weather is clear again, within the next few weeks we're going back to the wreck of the Martha Town, and this time we know what we'll be looking for.
Well, Dan, here's luck. To the safe recovery of the contents of the captain's personal strongbox.
Right. Plus all the luck that still remains in those Confederate horseshoes in the secret cargo.